The desert stretched endless beneath the burning sun. Waves of golden sand rolled across the horizon, shifting with every gust of hot wind. It was a land of silence, a graveyard where voices were swallowed by the dunes. A place where even hope seemed to die. Cale staggered forward, his boots sinking deep into the sand. Sweat burned his eyes. His survival gear was torn, his water nearly gone. He had been separated from his unit after the battle in orbit, his drop pod had crashed far from the colony line, leaving him stranded in the wasteland. He knew the desert killed fast, and he had only hours before the heat claimed him. Yet even in despair, something caught his eye. A small mound half buried in the sand. Darker than the golden dunes, he moved closer, kneeling despite his exhaustion. Brushing away the grit, he froze. His breath caught in his throat. It was not rock, not debris. It was a body. The figure was slender, delicate. Her skin shimmered with a deep shade of violet. Her hair, black as midnight, spread across the sand like ink. Her face was still, her lips pale, her chest did not rise. Cale touched her wrist and felt nothing. Her heart had stopped for a moment. He thought it was hopeless. The desert had already claimed her, but something in him refused to walk away. He stared at her face, strangely peaceful even in death, and a thought burned inside him. Not like this. He pulled her free from the sand, her body limp in his arms. He laid her down on the firmer ground beside his pack. His training screamed at him, survival first, conserve energy, but his humanity screamed louder. He could not abandon her. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. His voice cracked in the dry air. "Don't give up now." He pressed his hands against her chest, forcing air into her lungs. His strength was failing, but he pushed anyway. Each moment felt endless. The desert wind howled around him, like voices whispering that it was already over. Minutes passed. His arms shook with exhaustion, his throat dry as ash, and then he felt it. The faintest tremor beneath his palms. A heartbeat, weak but real. Her chest rose in a shallow breath. Cale gasped, relief flooding his body. That's it. Stay with me." The alien girl's eyes flickered, glowing faintly under the harsh sun. She coughed weakly, sand spilling from her lips. Her body trembled as if waking from a deep, cold dream. She looked at him with confusion and fear, not fully aware of where she was. Cale steadied her, speaking softly. "You're alive. I've got you. You're safe." But in her gaze there was no trust yet, only the shadow of old fear. She tried to speak, her voice barely a whisper, the words in her language unknown to him. Then she slipped back into weakness, her head resting against the sand. Cale looked around the endless desert. His options were few. His water was low, his energy fading, but leaving her behind was not an option. She was alive now because of him, and he would not let her die again. He built a small shade with the scraps from his crash pack, shielding her body from the brutal sun. He dripped a few drops of water onto her lips, rationing every bit. She stirred faintly but did not wake. As the evening sun dipped lower, the desert began to cool. Shadows stretched long across the dunes. Cale sat beside her, shovel in hand, eyes scanning the horizon. He knew her people might come searching, and he knew what they thought of humans. He had heard the stories, how they saw his kind as dangerous, violent, untrustworthy. If they found him with her, they would not see a rescuer, they would see a threat. The wind shifted, carrying distant echoes across the sand. Cale gripped his shovel tighter, his heart pounding. He was not sure if it was just the desert playing tricks or something real, but he knew one thing. The choice he made here would change everything. He looked at the alien girl lying weak beneath the crude shelter, her violet skin glowing faintly. In the fading light, she was fragile, beautiful, and completely at his mercy. The desert had tried to claim her, but he had pulled her back. Cale whispered into the silence, "If the galaxy wants to call us dangerous, then let it, because I'll fight the desert. I'll fight anyone, but I won't let you die." The stars began to appear above, cold and Distant, the desert of silence stretched endless. But within that silence, a heartbeat had returned, fragile yet alive, and in that moment, Cale understood this was no accident. Fate had buried her beneath the sands, but he had brought her back, and nothing in the universe would ever be the same again. The desert night was colder than Cale expected. The heat of the day was gone, replaced by winds that bit through his worn jacket. He sat close to the crude shelter he had made, watching the alien girl's shallow breathing, every rise of her chest was a small victory, a reminder that she was alive because he refused to let her go. When dawn broke, the golden light spread across the dunes. Cale checked her pulse again. It was weak, but steady. Relief filled him. Yet worry gnawed at his chest. He had little water left, and carrying her through the desert would be near impossible. Then, as if answering his fears, she stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes of bright silver. They glowed faintly in the morning sun. Cale leaned closer. Easy, you're safe. Can you hear me? Her lips parted, words spilled out. Sharp and musical in her language, he could not understand. Her voice carried both fear and confusion. Her hands moved weakly, pushing against the sand as if trying to escape. Cale raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. It's all right. I'm not here to hurt you. You were gone. I brought you back. She shook her head weakly, whispering more words. Her silver eyes locked onto him with suspicion. She tried to sit up, but her strength failed. She collapsed back against the sand, her breath uneven. Cale reached for his canteen, tilting it carefully, letting drops of water touch her lips. She hesitated, her gaze fixed on him. Then slowly she drank. The simple act felt like a truce. Fragile but real. He smiled faintly. Good, that's better. She studied him for a long moment, her chest rising with slow breaths. Finally, she spoke again, this time in broken human tongue. Her accent was strange, but the meaning was clear. Why? You saved me. Cale blinked, surprised she knew his language. Because you were alive. Because no one deserves to die alone in the sand. Her brows furrowed, confusion filling her face. Humans. No saviors, humans. Destroy. The words cut deep, but Cale didn't look away. Maybe some, but not me, not today. Silence stretched between them. The desert wind whistled across the dunes. Her silver eyes searched his face as if trying to see truth in his words. Finally she whispered her name. Lyra. Cale nodded. Lyra, I'm Cale. She closed her eyes again, whispering something too soft to understand. But her body eased, her breathing calmer. Trust had not been given. But something had shifted. Hours passed as Cale tended to her. He rationed the last of his supplies, breaking pieces of dried food to share. She accepted only a little, but each bite kept her strength alive. By midday, he knew they had to move. The desert was endless, but staying meant death. He dug his hands into the sand, creating a makeshift stretcher with fabric from his crash kit. He lifted her gently, her weight light against his arms. She winced, but did not resist. Step after step, Cale pushed forward. The sun burned above. The sand swallowed his boots. Sweat poured down his face, but he did not stop. Lyra rested against him, her eyes half closed. At times she whispered words in her language, at times his name. As the second night fell, Cale collapsed beside a ridge of stone. He laid her down, carefully, gasping for breath. His strength was failing, but hers was growing. Lyra sat up slowly, her hand trembling as she touched his arm. You save, she whispered again. Her voice held less suspicion now, more wonder. Cale met her gaze, his voice rough but steady. I don't know why fate buried you here, but I wasn't about to let the desert win. Her silver eyes glistened, reflecting the faint starlight above. For the first time, a small, fragile smile touched her lips, but the peace did not last long. The night carried sounds, distant voices, not human, carried by the wind. Cale tensed, reaching for his shovel like a weapon. Lyra's eyes widened in alarm. She whispered quickly, Hunters, my people. Kale's jaw tightened. He looked out across the dunes. The figures were still far, but moving closer. Lyra grabbed his hand, her strength weak but her intent clear. If they see, you die. The words struck heavy. Kale looked at her, at the fear in her eyes. He realized saving her had brought more danger than he imagined, but he only gripped her hand tighter. His voice low, steady, unshaken. Then we run together. Desert wind howled. Carrying the sound of approaching danger, Kale pulled her close. Determination burning in his chest. He had saved her life once already, and now he would fight the desert, her people, and fate itself if he had to, because in her silver eyes he saw something worth protecting, something the sands could never bury again. The desert at night was no friend to Kale. The cold was sharp, and the silence was broken only by the crunch of his boots sinking into the sand. He carried Lyra across the dunes, his muscles burning. The faint glow of her silver eyes watched him, weak but alert. Behind them, faint lights flickered on the horizon. Kale knew what they were, search beacons. The hunters were drawing closer. Lyra's voice trembled as she whispered, "They come. For me, if they find us, they kill you." Kale gritted his teeth, his breath heavy. "Then they won't find us." She shook her head faintly, her hand clutching his sleeve. "They never stop. Hunters track until blood falls. They will not forgive you." Kale kept moving, every step defying her warning. "Maybe, but I didn't save you just to hand you back to them." The sand shifted under his boots. The dunes rising higher. He searched the horizon, hoping for cover. At last, he spotted jagged stones jutting from the earth. A small canyon carved into the desert floor. Shelter. He slid down into the shadowed ravine, setting Lyra gently against the rocks. She coughed weakly, her body trembling, but her eyes held determination now, not just fear. "You should leave me," she whispered. "If I die here, you live. If you carry me, you die." Kale crouched beside her, his jaw tight. "Not happening. I made my choice. I'll see this through." Her silver eyes locked on his, as if searching for weakness, but all she saw was stubborn fire. She lowered her gaze, whispering, "Humans. So foolish." Yet her lips curved with the faintest trace of wonder. The sound of the hunters grew louder. Their voices echoed faintly through the canyon, harsh and guttural. Kale pressed his back against the stone, his heart pounding. He had no weapons but his shovel and a single emergency flare. Lyra reached out, her hand brushing his arm. "Hide, do not fight them. You cannot win." Kale shook his head. "Maybe not, but I'll give them a reason to remember me." The glow of torches appeared at the mouth of the canyon. Shadows stretched across the sand. Kale crouched low, his muscles tense. The hunters stepped closer, tall figures wrapped in desert armor, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They spoke in their tongue, sharp and commanding. Lyra translated in a whisper, "They say, they smell us. They know we are here." Kale's grip tightened on the shovel. Sweat dripped down his neck. The first hunter stepped closer, raising a spear tipped with glowing crystal. Before he could strike, Kale lit the emergency flare. The sudden red blaze filled the canyon with firelight. The hunters staggered back. Blinded for a moment, Kale swung the shovel with all his strength, knocking the spear aside. Sand exploded under his feet as he pushed forward. The hunters roared in anger. Lyra gasped, watching as Kale fought with nothing but raw determination. His movements were clumsy against their weapons, but his strength and will kept him standing. Every strike was fueled not by training, but by refusal to fall. "Run!" Kale shouted, though he knew she could not. Lyra struggled to her feet, leaning against the rock. Her silver eyes burned as she whispered words in her language. Her voice grew louder, and suddenly the air shimmered. The hunters froze, their eyes widening in shock. A glow surrounded Lyra, faint but undeniable. The sand beneath her pulsed with light. She staggered forward, her voice cutting through the night. "They see me," she gasped. "Alive. Because of you." The hunters hesitated, whispers passing among them. Their orders had been clear: retrieve the body, punish the human. But the sight before them was something different. She was not dead, she was standing, her silver eyes blazing. With life, Cale stood beside her, his chest heaving, shovel in hand. "Tell them," he muttered. "Tell them I saved you, not stole you." Lyra's voice wavered, but she shouted in her tongue. Her words carried across the canyon. Her people listened. Some lowered their weapons, unsure, but one hunter stepped forward. His spear raised high, his voice thundered. "No human brings life, they only bring death." Cale braced himself, but before the strike fell, Lyra stepped between them, her weak frame blocking the spear. Her silver eyes shone bright as she declared, "This human saved me. He gave me breath when the sands took it. If you strike him, you strike me." The canyon fell silent. The hunters looked at her in shock. No one had expected such defiance. Not from her, not for him. Cale lowered his weapon slowly, his voice quiet but firm. "Looks like they have a choice to make." The hunters stood frozen, torn between loyalty to their laws and the living proof. Standing before them, Lyra swayed, her strength fading. Cale caught her before she fell. In that silence, under the starlit desert sky, one truth became clear: Cale and Lyra were no longer just survivor and saved. They were bound by something stronger, and the galaxy itself would soon feel the weight of it. The hunters did not strike, but their hesitation bought only moments. Cale knew they could not remain in the canyon. The desert was shifting, and the winds were rising. By the time the second night fell, the air had grown restless. The horizon shimmered with a strange light. Lyra's silver eyes widened with fear. She whispered one word, heavy with warning: "Storm." Cale looked out at the dunes. The sky darkened as walls of sand rose into the heavens. The wind howled louder, sharp, grains already stinging his skin. He knew what was coming: an ocean of sand that could swallow armies whole. "Move," Cale said quickly, lifting Lyra into his arms. Her body trembled, but she did not resist. The hunters' lights vanished behind them as the storm swallowed all sight. Cale pushed forward blindly, every step against the raging wind. Sand whipped across his face, blinding him. The roar of the storm drowned every thought. He bent low, shielding Lyra with his body. The world became a swirling chaos of dust and wind. Then, through the storm, he saw dark shapes half buried in the dunes. Stone walls carved with glowing lines. An entrance, old and broken, but standing against the storm's fury. With the last of his strength, Cale staggered toward it, forcing his way inside. The moment they crossed the threshold, the roar of the storm dimmed. Sand poured behind them, sealing the entrance, but inside was silence. Cale lowered Lyra gently against the cool stone. His chest heaved, his lungs burned. He had no breath left, but relief flooded him. They had survived. Lyra looked around her, silver eyes wide. The walls glowed faintly with ancient patterns, symbols carved deep into the stone. She whispered, her voice trembling, "This place, it should not exist. This is forbidden ground." Cale raised his lamp, letting the light sweep across the chamber. The walls told stories and symbols and images, figures of her people, standing beside figures that looked human. Together they built towers, shared fire, fought enemies side by side. Cale froze, his heart pounding. He traced the carvings with his hand. This is us." Lyra stared at the images, disbelief filling her face. "No, it cannot be. Our history says humans came from war, from destruction. You were never with us. You were the enemy." Cale shook his head slowly. "Then your history lied." They walked deeper into the ruin. The storm roared above, but the stone walls stood firm. The air was dry, but it carried a strange hum, as if the ruins themselves remembered. At the heart of the chamber stood a pedestal, its surface smooth like glass. Cale stepped closer, placing his hand against it. The stone pulsed with light. Symbols spread across the walls, glowing brighter. Lyra gasped, stumbling back. "It responds to you." Cale's chest tightened. He whispered, Why me? The pedestal flickered, projecting faint holograms, images of humans and her people standing together, sharing technology, binding hands in unity. Then, images of fire, betrayal, war. The unity shattered, the alliance buried, the ruins faded into silence once more. Lyra trembled, her voice sharp. This cannot be true, it says. We were one, it says humans were once part of us. Kale's mind raced, his heart pounded. And maybe that's why they fear us. Because somewhere deep down, they remember what we were. The silence pressed heavy. Lyra turned her silver eyes toward him, her voice softer now. If this truth is real, then everything I was taught is false. You did not just save me from the sand. You carried the memory of what we were meant to be. Kale looked at her, her face lit by the glow of the ruins. Her expression was no longer only fear, but wonder. For the first time, trust flickered there, fragile but alive. The storm raged outside, shaking the walls, but within, the ruins whispered of forgotten unity. Kale placed his hand against the pedestal again. The glow pulsed once more, as if answering. Lyra stood beside him, her voice trembling but firm. The sands tried to bury me, but you brought me back. Now these ruins. They tell me why. Maybe it was never chance. Kale's gaze hardened, his voice steady. Then maybe we dig up the truth, no matter who wants it buried. The wind howled louder, dust slipping through cracks in the stone. The hunters would not stop. And now Kale knew the truth gave them even more reason to come. But as he stood in the glow of the ruins with Lyra at his side, he felt no fear. The desert had tried to take her. The storm had tried to bury them both. But together, they had found something greater. The truth had been hidden beneath the sands, and now it was alive again.